Hello and welcome to another installment of Metallic Reviews, the show where I take an honest look at the harder, heavier side of music and give it an honest rating. Today, we're going to be heading to Oakland, California, the city of failed baseball teams, failed basketball teams, failed football teams, and just a lot of failed sports franchises in general, to examine an album that I hope will not go down that road. Yes, it's progressive post-metalers Dawn of Ouroboros and their new one, Velvet Incandescence, out April 21st on Prosthetic Records. Now these guys, they're kind of new players. They've only been around for a few years. In fact, their debut album, The Art of Morphology, was released 3 years ago. So, with that being said, the question now is, have they suffered a sophomore slump? Let's go ahead and dive in and find out. You know, after the Metallica review last week, the one where I got way too excited for my own good, I realized as I was listening to this album that I was still in that mode of riff. You know, everything has to be riff. It's all thrashy, riffy goodness, and this album definitely detaches from that mindset and focuses more on the aspects of a record that, quite frankly, often get overlooked, namely the atmospherics and really the underlying pulse that the album has to offer. There isn't an effort here to try and find the heaviest thing or the most brutal thing on the planet, and in fact, I'd go so far as to say that each song has an incredibly abstract nucleus that kind of gets written around it, and everything just kind of pulls together around it. This is almost in parts like Caligula's Horse meets Cult of Luna's collaboration with Julie Christmas on Mariner, if that makes sense. It's got the progressive bent of the former while celebrating the atmosphere and the duality of the latter. I do love this album's willingness to take a lot of the elements of some of these other genres, especially black metal, and flip them over. For instance, the track Levitating Pacifes has that classic rapid-fire 4/4 black metal timing that would not be out of place on an album like Transylvanian Hunger. However, written over that is this really beautiful guitar work that both pays homage to, again, that more traditional black metal stuff, and then pushes the boundaries to explore new places. There's a sense of grandeur that's just sprinkled throughout the song. It pulls you in, keeps you coming back. It's my favorite track on the album, and that's saying something because it's the longest song on the album. And for those of you who watch me regularly, you know that I'm not a big fan of the longer stuff, but I love it when a band is able to write a long song like this. It's over 8 minutes long, but it doesn't feel like it's over 8 minutes long. It just pulls you in, keeps you there, and it's a really, really great track. Another positive here is the overall focus on atmosphere over just crushing precision. Not that I hate the latter, far from it, in fact, but there's just something about a metal album that takes you kind of into space with what it's trying to accomplish. You're trying to dig into where they were going with this passage or with that passage. It's just all really great. Guitarists Tony Thomas and Ian Baker utilize effects very, very well here. And there's a lot of soft plucking when it comes to the guitar work that snowballs over into this huge pulsating blur of sound and musical art that at times can be completely dazzling. When it works, it's among the greatest sounds in all of metal. It's one of my favorites. And I gotta say, even when it doesn't quite come together perfectly, it's still not the worst thing in the world. I've also got to give a lot of props to vocalist Chelsea Green. Once again, I bring up this album's duality. It rides that fine line between prog and black with a ton of post-metal thrown in, and Green adds to this by doing both harsh and clean vocals. You know, I'm a metalcore guy. I love it when a vocalist is able to press themselves into this, good versus bad, dark versus light type vocals. A lot of bands will rely on a guitarist for backing cleans, but not here. That's what I love about it. Green offers something somewhat ubiquitous among metal vocalists, yet definitely draws inspiration from around the realm. There's a lot of kind of if Ginger were to put out a post-black metal album. That's how I could describe her vocals here. She presses herself into these new vocal areas very seamlessly, and I appreciate that because a lot of times the transitions on these types of albums can be somewhat rough around the edges, but not here. Now, on the downside, the album does take a little bit to get going. I got a little scared with the album's first 2 tracks because they didn't have quite the same oomph that the rest of the album had to offer. They weren't terrible songs, but there were elements to them that I just kind of couldn't get behind. It felt like the band were kind of trying to race out of the starting gate and stumbled over their collective shoelaces a bit. Thankfully, the third track, Iron Whisper, started, and the rest of the album works on so many different levels and is just a joy to get through. It also ends with one of the best album closures of the year so far in Velvet Moon. Another downside is in the pacing of the record. There's not really a commitment to a song length. The band kind of plays and explores with different things. Now, that could work on something like a metalcore record or even a deathcore or grindcore effort where shorter, punchier songs are expected. Here, it makes the album feel a little out of sync. On anything with the term post in it, I do expect a little bit longer songs that leap above that ground and pound style that we're used to. While that does happen in droves here, it seems like the band do write better when they allow themselves to advance beyond the 3.5 minute fence. When they don't, it's not terrible, but it's certainly not as good as the longer stuff on this record. Overall, though, Dawn of Ouroboros have released one of the better albums of the year so far. I don't think it'll be album of the year for me, but it's definitely one of my favorites. I love it when the band does allow themselves to be a post band and push themselves above the musical roadway, guiding the listener on this spaceship ride to the stratosphere and beyond. It's great. When they don't do this, it can get a little bumpy at times, but it's still not terrible. In light of all that, I'm giving Velvet Incandescence a solid 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching. Click like and do not forget to subscribe for more Metallic reviews. Next week, we're going to be jumping back into the thrash metal world as we are going to be reviewing the latest effort from Virginia band Enforced, titled War Remains. I hope you join me. You've been watching Metallic Reviews, where I give honest ratings to honest music, and I will see y'all next time.